Welcome back to the Jiu-Jitsu Oracle. We've got UFC BJJ 3 happening on Thursday night in the US. Free on YouTube, so there's no excuse not to watch. I'm Ross, that's Calum. Not the most exciting main event, Calum, I have to say, for this event. But I don't think we should dwell on that too much. I think we should dive into what we're interested in, what we think people should watch. And if you agree with our comments, let us know in the comments. Get some discussion going. So, Calum, anyway, the main event, Mikey Musumeci against Kevin Carrasco. Fair to say, a little bit uninspiring. That said, the show's free on YouTube, so if it gets to that point and you decide to watch it, fair enough, keep watching. If you want to turn it off at that point, fair enough. But just on the main event, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's just the same critique that has come Mikey's way the past few years, whether it is up to him asking for these matches and people that aren't really on his level, or whether it's just to the organizations he's been signed with, like one in UFC, not able to sign other top guys around his weight. Don't really know what the reason is, but it's just the same story with Mikey the past couple of years, facing guys that aren't on his level. Want to see him versus Pat O's and um, Baby Sharks and stuff, but we've not really had those matches. So yeah, just the same story with Mikey.
I'd say, like, on the one hand, Mikey's been pretty open about trying to get matches with Baby Shark, and they've not just really come to be for one reason or the other. The other thing with Mikey in his defense, like, because it does look like matches that he's had recently haven't been as big a challenge for him as we would maybe like to see. But there was that match with Cade Rotolo that was scheduled for one that fell apart. And I don't think it was down to Mikey. Maybe like Cade was the first to pull out of it. From what I remember, it seemed like Mikey was up for the match. So I think, like, potentially Mikey is up for these like more difficult challenges. I just think like the weight that he's putting himself at for the matches means the talent pool isn't that deep. And then with UFC BJJ, they only have access to certain guys. So I don't think we're going to get to see Mikey tested really hard in UFC BJJ for a while, unless they can find an opponent that like the likes of Diego Pato or something, like, are willing to sign. But I think Mikey should win this match and should win the match well. Would you agree?
Yeah.
And if he doesn't, it would be a disappointing performance, probably, right?
Yeah.
So over to Mikey, you're in the main event. You're the poster boy for UFC BJJ. Let's see you go out and have an exciting, interesting match. And you should be able, like, full respect to Kevin Carrasco, but Mikey on top form should win. So let's see it happen. The rest of the card gets more interesting. Carlos Enrique against Matheus Gabriel. Matheus Gabriel is awesome. It's an interesting signing because it seems that UFC BJJ, guys looking on YouTube, you'll see the card on the screen. They seem to be signing a lot of Brazilian gi guys to come into this event, which I think is an interesting strategy. So, one, give us some thoughts on Matheus Gabriel, Calum. Two, what do you think about this signing policy that's making up this card?
Yeah, Matheus Gabriel is definitely one of the best guys in the world around that weight. More so seen him in the gi, has had some gi matches, and I'd like to see more of him. Sorry, he has had no gi matches. I'd like to see more no gi matches from him in the future. He had a match against Cade, which he lost, but I think he put up an all right showing against him. But yeah, this is a exciting match. Carlos coming out of the reality TV show that they put on. Can't remember the name of it, but it was like an Ultimate Fighter type deal. So that should be an exciting match. Yeah, we spoke before about the Brazilian gi guys. I think you thought it was maybe due to the who is it running it? Claudia Gadelia.
Yeah, Claudia. Yeah, I think maybe given her background in grappling, I think maybe she knows these guys and is reaching out to them. It's guys she's well aware of. And also because they're not affiliated with other no-gi promotions, like none of them are signed up to WNO or One, so they're available. And I assume if they compete for the UFC BJJ, UFC BJJ seems to have a decent relationship with IBJJF. Like we've seen some footage from IBJJF used on the UFC BJJ events. So I think maybe they're the reasons why they're reaching out to these Brazilian gi players, or well, predominantly gi players. I think there's like these guys that we're talking about, Matheus Gabriel, world champion in the gi coming in to the event. So there's really good guys out there to grab. But just like name value wise, I don't see them being huge for like the bigger grappling community. Although grappling geeks like you and me, we know all about Matheus Gabriel and should be excited about seeing him.
Yeah, I feel like 5 or so years ago, like the biggest names were the gi guys, as well as some of the no gi guys, but like it's not really how it's going now. I feel like all the biggest names pretty much are no gi guys, so interesting to see them go the other way with it, whether it is because of Claudia, or maybe they're getting a big audience from Brazil, or maybe it's like you say, they're not able to sign some of the no gi guys that have already got contracts elsewhere, or maybe some of the no gi guys aren't wanting to sign an exclusive contract. Don't really know why, but hopefully they're able to kind of build the names of these guys and come up with interesting events, because they don't really have the same star power starting out as some of the other events, like Who's Number One.
That's the thing. If UFC BJJ is saying, come with us, we'll build your brand, you'll be associated with a big brand in the UFC, and we'll help grow your individual stock along the way. Bringing in these world champion caliber guys who are not massively well known in your sort of casual grappling fan community, I think if UFC is what it says it is, they'll make these guys well known. And in a few years, you'll get the likes of like Matheus Gabriel or Samuel Nagai in ADCC, and there've been a lot of eyes on these guys. But right now, I think like they're coming in, and it's the job of, well, it's not a job because we don't get paid for this, but part of our role in the Jiu-Jitsu Oracle, why we're doing this, is to try and like tell people, guys we know about, who other people might not be so familiar with, like try and give them reasons to like tune in and watch. And obviously, if people listening to our pod will be already big grappling fans. So if you're a fan of Matheus Gabriel or Carlos Enrique, get into the comments, let us know why you're a fan of them, and let us know who you think's going to win. I think it'll be a really good match. Kennedy Maciel against Simon the Guy should be in that category as well, shouldn't it?
Yeah, I'm seeing there that it's taking place at middleweight, which is a bit strange. I don't know if that's a typo or what. Those guys compete usually featherweight to lightweight in the gi. And then I think this is UFC weight classes. So middleweight for UFC is like 185 pounds, 84 kilos. So that's very high. So I don't know if that's a typo or maybe one of them is a bit fat at the moment. I'm not really too sure, but should be an exciting match anyway. Simon the guy was just on the Polaris squads. Had some exciting matches on there. And then Kennedy. I don't remember seeing Kennedy that recently in many things, but he was having a tear one year. I think it was the year that we started the podcast, so it'd be good to see him back in action against a good opponent.
I think Kennedy, am I right in thinking he competed on one of the first two UFC BJJ shows, and there was something around about like the organizers not thinking his performance was as exciting or interesting as it should have been. That kind of like rings a bell in my head. Calum, I can only see you small right now because like the card's on the screen, which is fine. But
Yeah.
if anyone else remembers that, let me know in the comments. Or am I misremembering that? But yeah, he did have that. It was the same year he ended up on a run which could have taken him to the Super Grand Slam at the same time as Mika was going for that title as well. And Kennedy was winning a lot of matches. And I remember us having a discussion around about, was Kennedy edging a lot of close matches and like getting, I don't want to say favorable decisions, but like judges were like leaning towards him with refs' decisions and stuff like that because there was a lot of close matches? Or was he now so tactically astute that he was playing the game very, very well? I remember us having discussions around about Kennedy to do with that. So maybe if someone's saying, oh, his performance wasn't as exciting, it's just because Kennedy's a much better tactician now and plays that way to win. But I think with the UFC, like, they do really want to see the pace pushed in their events and for there to be a lot of action. Next on the card, Kasia Mura against Alex Enriquez. Kasia, really young black belt. Did she not go like blue belt to black belt ridiculously quickly?
Okay.
Does that ring a bell with you? Pardon? Doesn't ring a bell.
It's not a name I really recognise.
All right, so I think she went blue to black like really quickly by managing to win world titles and going up the belt ranks that way. Get in the comments, let me know if I'm right or if I'm wrong. Then we see the match that I think's the most interesting, exciting match on the card. Jansen Gomes against Gustavo Batista. Now, just before we get into this, Calum, if I'm UFC BJJ and I'm booking a show, right, and I'm bringing in Jansen Gomes, I'm not just putting Jansen Gomes' name in the middle of the poster and then he's having a match on the show. Like, I'm making a big deal about, we've signed Jansen Gomes, he's coming in, look at this guy, highlight reel of what he does, and totally putting over the fact that he beat Tynan Dalpra in the gi. So I think he should be getting like a bit more fanfare coming into this event than I've seen UFC BJJ give him. Do you think I'm right to big up Jansen that much?
Yeah, I think so, but I don't think outside of Mikey and Andrew Tack, I don't think they've done that much promotion for much of the athletes, to be honest, on an individual level. But yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, so Jansen, give him the big build-up, UFC. What do you think about this match with Gustavo Batista? Gustavo Batista, very underrated, will fly under the radar for a lot of people, but like absolute world-class level. I think this match, these two guys have faced before and they've traded wins, so I think it should be super close. What do you think? Am I right or wrong?
Yeah, I think it should be a good match. Gustavo's got really, really good pressure passing, but kind of like, Tynan's obviously got amazing passing, but Jansen didn't let him get on top. I think that's going to be maybe similar here. I think Jansen will have a athleticism and technical advantage on the feet. Might force Gustavo to pull or take Gustavo down, so won't necessarily get to see Gustavo's passing, and we'll see how it plays out from there, but it should be an interesting match.
What about leg locks?
Yeah, I think that's something Gustavo started to add into his game in the gi the last couple of years, straight ankle lock, so definitely could see some of that in action as well.
And we might not have seen Jansen be involved in that sort of situations as much.
Yeah.
So be interesting to see if it does end up in the legs, how it goes. But yeah, like you said, Gustavo, really good sort of like straight ankle lock now. So I can't see like the entanglements involving positions like the saddle and false reap and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I think it's an interesting battle. The other thing with Jansen is like he uses when he grapples on the feet, I think he uses the gi incredibly well. Like, I'm interested to see his no-gi wrestling.
Yeah.
Calum agrees. Right. I think it's a close match between two like absolutely top level guys that's probably flying under the radar a bit because it's been plonked in the middle of the card. Try give it the big sell. Get us in the comments. Let us know what you think. Are we right to do that? Now, next on the card, one of the favourites of the pod, Calum, Andy Murasaki. We like Andy, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
Fair to say that probably like he should. It's a really tough weight class, but if his career pans out the way it hopefully will, he should get a world title at some point, right? He's that good. He's so close.
Yeah, he's almost like the Craig Jones of the gi. He's just perennial second place. Guys like Jonathan Alves and Tynan Dalpra and Mika Galvao in his weight classes that he's not quite been able to beat, but always seems to make his way to the final or does very well and then comes up against one of those guys and loses. So yeah, he should definitely win it at one point, whether he's going to overcome one of those guys or just come up in a year where one of those guys aren't competing. He should definitely win. He's definitely got the skill level for it.
Yeah. Then we should get an exciting match with Andy Varela. And then like the bottom two matches on the card, I'm not so familiar with. So just anything on those last three matches that stands out to you.
The only name that I recognise is Andy Varela, so I'm sure that'll be an exciting match, but I don't really know much about the other 5 grapplers.
Well, I have seen Jalen and I like in the gi. So I'm familiar with him, but not super familiar with them. So good chance if you are more familiar with these guys to let us know what we should be looking out for. But that is UFC BJJ 3. I think it's a big enough event that we should do a standalone pod promoting it, and hopefully the matches live up to it. Well, I will say, Calum, just on this and why we're choosing to do a pod now. Are you like me, and have you had a bit of a CJI2 post-event hangover?
Maybe, but I just don't think there's been that much good stuff on.
Yeah, like I try and be like very optimistic towards grappling events, and because even if like the card doesn't like jump out to me, you know, is my job. It's a big part of like my life grappling. So I like to watch, but I think like there's like CGI2 was like so hyped and interesting and exciting and all that. Like post event, I just think like, yeah, I've been finding that rather than watching what have we had? We had like Polaris, we had Ocean, we had EBI. And with those events, I tended to be looking at footage more on Instagram and then watching the occasional match on whatever platform they were on, rather than doing a deep dive into the event and watching the whole thing. Is that my fault? Or could the events have like a bit more narrative, a bit more hype? Or is it both?
Yeah, narrative hype. I also think it's like, I don't know, these events seem to have like a high turnover rate as far as there seems to be new ones popping up all the time, and because I don't follow their social media, I don't even really know they're happening until they're happening. Like some of the guys that were on that Ocean Grappling were good names, and like had they been on like, I'll just pick an event from the past, like a Kasai that had that name, then I feel like you'd be more excited about it because you know what Kasai is, you know the deal. It seems like outside of some of the top names, like Who's Number One, Polaris, like UFC, a lot of I don't know if they just financially can't make it work or what goes on, but it seems like there's a lot of new events popping up, other ones from the past that aren't doing events anymore. So maybe that has something to do with it as well.
I think like there's a couple of things. I don't want to go too much into like the sort of business side of it, right? But as a former journalist and a long-time pro wrestling fan, I think a lot of these events could do a better job at selling storylines, getting guys out there selling matches, all that kind of stuff, right? And if you need help with it, give us a shout. Maybe we can help. You know, like we've got a pod. It's a small little podcast in the world of grappling, right? But we never get offered interviews with people or whatever, right? You know, I don't really see like some of these events happen. I don't really see much out there promoting it, you know? And actually, when it comes down to CJI, like Craig did a heck of a job in the build up to the event, like doing as much as he can or could to get the guys over, you know? But I think even the guys themselves could have done a bit more. So I think there's a lot around there, and I've just like, yeah, it just came out of it, and I was like, I just think these days, and this is why I want to have this discussion at the end of the pod, not at the start, because I didn't want to start the pod to be like sounding a bit negative. But I just think these days, like, it's not enough. There's so much competing for attention, right? I've just been watching NFL, college football, soccer football in multiple countries, the Ryder Cup. Like, there's a lot of competing events trying to get my attention. And yeah, I just like to see like a bit more story, a bit more hype, a bit more narrative around about these events. And just what I was going to say is like throwing exciting matches together doesn't really drive views. Like we've seen with a lot of combat sport and a lot of pro wrestling, etc. If you put on a match on the card and the selling point is it's going to be exciting, it's not as big a draw as other reasons. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
Calum's distracted. Someone's come into his room. I'm guessing the dog.
Yeah.
I'm right. Okay. So, I think it's a good point to end anyway. But yeah, get into the comments. Let me know. If I've missed matches that I should be watching, please let me know what I should be watching. If you agree that there should be a bit more hype, storyline, etc. around about events, let me know. And if you can think of any reasons, any storylines around about these matches for UFC BJJ that we've missed, let us know. But that concludes this edition of the Jiu-Jitsu Oracle, and we will be watching UFC BJJ 3, and we will be back with our opinions on the event in the near future.